They called me broke at my father's birthday dinner, and that's when I decided to destroy them. Not with anger, not with screaming or tears or dramatic accusations. I destroyed them with evidence, timing, and the kind of quiet patience that terrifies arrogant people. Let me tell you how it happened. I mean, it's not like she owns anything anyway. My brother Caleb's voice slides across the mahogany table like a knife. Crystal glasses clink. My uncle laughs. My stepmother smirks. Everyone at that expensive restaurant knows what's happening. They're turning me into tonight's entertainment. I'm 32 years old. I'm sitting in my good navy dress, and I'm being publicly dismantled by people who share my blood. Renting forever isn't exactly a path to success. My cousin adds sweetly, and there's genuine mockery in her voice. I don't react. I smooth my dress over my knees. I take a sip of water. I make eye contact with no one because I know what they want. They want me to cry, to yell, to defend myself with desperate words that prove they're right about me. They want emotional chaos. They won't get it. Under the table, my hand trembles slightly, but my face stays calm. My father watches the whole thing and says nothing. Caleb leans back like he's won something important. Then I reach into my handbag. My fingers touch the thick edge of the contract, the real estate purchase agreement that closes in exactly 2 weeks. The property I bought as an LLC so nobody in this family would see it coming. The waterfront duplex sitting 15 minutes from our grandmother's lake house, positioned perfectly to mean something, to matter, to change everything. But I don't pull it out. Not yet. Dessert hasn't been served, and humiliation tastes better when it ripens. 3 years before that dinner, my mother died, and everything in my family shifted like tectonic plates. Before that, I was the reliable one, the steady daughter who handled hospital paperwork while Caleb was always working on his startup idea. After the funeral, I expected us to come together. I expected grief to make us honest. Instead, my father married Marianne within a year. She came with soft sweaters, sharp instincts, and immediate access to every important decision in our family. I became invisible. When I entered rooms, conversations stopped. When I asked questions about estate matters or financial planning, I got vague answers and patient smiles. But Caleb was always there for the important talks. I watched him whisper with my father. I watched them exchange glances that excluded me. I watched them become a different family, and I was on the outside of it. But grief has a strange gift. It sharpens you. While they thought my quiet meant I was fragile or stupid, I was actually learning. I learned who controlled documents, who signed what, who called the meetings when they thought nobody important was listening. I learned that Caleb had always been ambitious and that ambition in a person with low morals is dangerous. I didn't confront anyone. I just watched. I listened. I remembered. I found out about the trust amendment by accident. One Tuesday afternoon, I brought our grandmother groceries like I did every week. I found a stranger measuring her windows with a clipboard. When I asked what he was doing, he answered casually, "Your brother requested this appraisal." Not our family, our brother alone. I stood in that doorway with a frozen smile while my pulse hammered in my ears. My grandmother looked confused. She didn't remember authorizing anything. She just repeated what Caleb had told her, something about insurance purposes. I drove home that evening in complete silence. Then I called a property attorney, not to fight, to understand. Because if appraisals were happening without transparency, something larger was unfolding. If assets were being moved around secretly, I needed to know why. The attorney's office was clean and quiet. She pulled up the documents and confirmed my worst suspicion. My grandmother's trust was being amended. Subtly, legally, strategically. Not eliminating me, just minimizing me. Caleb was listed as primary property overseer, management authority over everything. The kind of power that makes someone invisible when money is being moved around. Can it be challenged? I asked. The attorney smiled slightly. Not if you don't act first. That's when I asked about investment properties. Not for inheritance, for leverage. If my family underestimated me financially, they would underestimate every move I made. And people who are underestimated can operate in total darkness. That night, I researched properties within 15 miles of my grandmother's lake house. Location matters, especially when optics matter. I wasn't trying to one-up Caleb or prove something to my family. I was positioning myself. I was creating leverage. I was making myself impossible to ignore when the moment came. The duplex found me as much as I found it. Waterfront, 2 units, recently renovated, close enough to the lake property to mean something, far enough to feel separate. I toured it alone, ran the numbers, made an offer under an LLC with no family name attached. Escrow moved quickly. The inspection came back clean. I signed the contract with steady hands, knowing exactly what I was doing and why. It wasn't revenge yet. It was preparation. It was building a foundation for the moment when I would need it. When the papers finalized, I didn't celebrate. I filed them carefully and waited. Because timing matters more than triumph. 2 weeks later, I sat across from my brother at our father's 60th birthday dinner. I was holding property that would change everything, and nobody at that table had any idea. Caleb dominated the conversation within minutes like he always did. He talked about investors. He talked about development. He spoke about our grandmother's property like he already owned it. He painted himself as the visionary, the strategic thinker, the one who understood real estate and vision and growth. I let him talk. I watched him build the entire illusion brick by brick. Then came the moment, the humiliation, the she owns nothing comment that was designed to establish hierarchy, to prove that I was the failure and he was the success, that they were right to marginalize me. I counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. No anger, no defense, just patience. They thought they'd won. My father nodded approvingly. My stepmother's smile was satisfied. Caleb leaned back like he'd delivered the closing argument in a trial. That's when I pulled the contract out. I didn't do it dramatically. I just unfolded it slowly and placed it next to my wine glass, completely calm. What's that? Caleb asked carefully. I closed 2 weeks ago, I said. My voice was steady, quiet, and absolutely certain. Waterfront property, 15 minutes from here. Silence detonated across the table. My father blinked. Grandma straightened up. Marianne's smile vanished. Caleb's jaw tightened. For investment, I continued, meeting his eyes directly. The dynamic shifted in that single moment like a door slamming shut on his authority. As I explained the details, the square footage, the rental potential, the strategic location, I watched comprehension bloom across their faces. This wasn't an impulsive purchase. This was calculated. This was professional. This was proof that I had been thinking, planning, building while they were laughing at their dinner table. My grandmother's hand found mine under the table, not in celebration, but in recognition. She understood immediately what this meant. Her granddaughter wasn't broke. Her granddaughter was brilliant. Her granddaughter had been working in the shadows while they all looked at the light. Caleb's face cycled through several emotions: shock, anger, calculation, then something that looked almost like respect mixed with fear. He realized in that moment that he'd made a critical miscalculation. He'd underestimated me, and that underestimation had cost him leverage. Later that evening, Caleb cornered me near the patio. You did this to interfere, he said quietly, and I could hear the anger buried under his calm voice. No, I replied. I did it to invest. You're making things complicated. For who? He didn't answer, because complication only exists when someone expects to maintain control, and he was losing it. You've been making decisions without me, I said calmly. Changes to Grandma's trust, negotiations with developers, appraisals you didn't tell her about. His eyes flickered. So I was right. He thought I didn't know. He thought my silence meant I was ignorant or passive. You're overthinking this, he said finally. Maybe. But overthinking wins wars. He walked back inside, and I realized something. Standing alone on that patio, this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I stood there for several minutes, watching the moonlight reflect off the water in the distance. The cool night air cleared my head. I thought about all the moments I'd held my tongue, all the family conversations where I'd sat quietly while Caleb spun narratives about his vision, his plans, his understanding of what was best for our family's assets. He'd built an entire empire of assumptions about me, that I was passive, that I was content to be excluded, that my silence meant surrender. But silence, I'd learned, was the most powerful tool available to someone willing to use it strategically. I thought about my mother then, as I often did during critical moments. She would have been proud, not of my victory, but of my restraint. She taught me that dignity was never performed for an audience. It was something you carried internally, something you demonstrated through your choices when no one was watching. Caleb had assumed that because I wasn't fighting visibly, I wasn't fighting at all. He'd made the fatal mistake of every person who underestimates quiet people. He confused silence with weakness. The property purchase was never about proving I had money. It was about proving I had strategy. It was about showing that while everyone else was performing their success at dinner tables and family gatherings, I was actually building something real. I heard Caleb's voice from inside, trying to recover the narrative. He was probably explaining away my purchase as a desperate attempt to compete, to prove something. He was probably already constructing the story he would tell himself and others to make sense of his misjudgment. But the truth was simpler. I'd stopped waiting for permission to exist in my family. I'd stopped asking for inclusion. I'd simply moved forward without them, and now they had to contend with the fact of my existence as an equal player, whether they acknowledged it or not. The next morning, my grandmother called me to her house. "Did you know about the appraisal?" she asked softly. Yes, her eyes sharpened. I didn't authorize changes to my trust. That landed heavily. If Grandma didn't initiate it, then someone else did. Someone was making moves without her permission, in her name, with her legacy. Caleb said the adjustments were necessary, she said. Necessary. For whom? I showed her what I'd discovered. The amended trust. The reduced authority for anyone except Caleb. The developer correspondence I'd obtained. The whole strategy laid out in legal documents and emails. Her hands began to tremble, but not from weakness, from betrayal. "I revoke the amendments," she said simply. "Today, all of them." She didn't ask my permission. She didn't debate it. She just picked up her phone and called her attorney. The family fracture was immediate. Caleb withdrew. My father avoided eye contact with both of us. Marianne's politeness became so brittle it could shatter. But something else happened, something that mattered more than their discomfort. Grandma asked me to co-manage her properties. Not out of revenge, out of trust. I accepted carefully, knowing what it meant. When Caleb found out, he called me in anger. "You turned her against me," he said. "No," I replied simply. "You did." He hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt balanced. Months passed. Caleb moved his investments elsewhere. Family dinners became quieter, less performative, more careful. I rented out the second unit of my duplex at a profit. Grandma and I reviewed documents together regularly. Transparency became standard practice instead of a luxury. No more closed doors. No more whispers. No more secret meetings. One evening, standing on my waterfront balcony watching the sun set over the water, I replayed that dinner in my mind. The laughter when they called me broke. The smirks. The certainty in Caleb's voice that I was irrelevant. They thought ownership defined worth. They forgot something critical. Worth isn't announced. It's demonstrated. I didn't expose Caleb to embarrass him. I exposed the truth to protect what mattered, and I never once screamed. That's what I'm proudest of, not the victory, but how I achieved it. With composure, with strategy, with patience that outlasted their arrogance. At the next birthday dinner, same restaurant, same crystal glasses, conversation flowed differently. No jabs, no comparisons, just cautious respect. Caleb raised a toast this time. "To family," he said, and his voice was measured in a way it had never been before. I met his eyes and nodded, because revenge was never about destruction. It was about correction. It was about making sure the truth couldn't be hidden anymore, that lies couldn't build empires, that silence could be stronger than any scream. They called me broke. They called me cautious. They called me irrelevant. Now they call me when documents need reviewing. Now they ask my opinion on financial matters. Now they understand that the quiet person in the room might be the most dangerous one. The contract I pulled from my purse that night wasn't just property. It was proof. And proof, placed at exactly the right moment, placed by someone with enough patience to wait for it, changes everything. I never raised my voice. I only raised the truth. And that was enough.